A lot of you are talking about cryptocurrencies, so we're going to be trying to get a lot more guests on who are experts in the crypto world. This episode, it's episode 78 with 34 Bytes founder. It's BYTES, 34 Bytes, Stephen Karlsgodt. And he's in LA, and he created a POS system that talks with and allows the commerce of Bitcoin at a retail shop or a merchant shop. So instead of just doing everything online, he has a POS system that you can take the app that you have on your phone, connect it with his POS system so that you can buy goods at stores. This stuff is getting fascinating. I'm actually thinking about buying some of this stuff. I was offered some Litecoin in exchange for some services, and I think I'm going to do it. This Bitcoin stuff, Litecoin, cryptocurrencies, why not? Let's take a risk. And we're going to talk a lot about this with Stephen and how he started his business, even in a really volatile space. So it's episode 78, 34 Bytes, Stephen Karlsgodt. Y'all ready? Let's go. Cryptocurrency, it's 2018, and it's probably the hottest buzzword. What is it, Stephen?
Cryptocurrency is essentially a new form of money or a store of value that is decentralized. There's no government that controls it. No single person controls it. It's an extremely powerful invention that I think is going to absolutely change the world in the years to come.
Decentralized meaning it's coming from multiple places, so there's not one place to attack it, if you will?
Yes, and the decisions about transactions that are made are made in a decentralized way. So there's no central authority that says this transaction is good or bad, or this person can send that person money or can't. It's like that. Everything is decentralized. There's no central authority.
How did you get involved into this?
I heard about it probably like in 2012, but I didn't actually start diving into it until 2013. And I didn't get it at first. It's so complicated, really. I mean, there's a lot of details going on, but I understood the overarching concepts, and it was just fascinating. And it kind of made me think about what is money and what is value, that when we're doing a transaction, we're paying somebody, what does that really mean? It kind of makes you reassess the way you think of what money is. And I just started going down the rabbit hole, looking, trying to understand all these different aspects of it. And you still learn something every day. I mean, it's a very intricate system that it's pretty amazing. It kind of, if you're of a curious type of mindset, I think it's the kind of thing that can definitely suck you in as you try to understand how it all works.
So knowing now that it's 2018 and not 2012 or 2013, like, what is money? What is the value? As you were questioning that, years ago, what do you think it is?
I think, and I don't know who this quote is attributed to, but I heard somebody say or read that money is just a mass mutual hallucination. People think that, one of the questions you always get, or I always get, is why is Bitcoin worth $12,000, whatever it is right now? And the answer is, that's just what other people value it at. Why is the dollar a dollar? Why is the dollar worth, a soda out of a machine? I mean, it's basically when you know that you can give somebody a dollar or for some service or product, and they'll accept that dollar because they know they can then take that dollar and give it to somebody else, right? There's wide enough acceptance that people will accept it, and you can be on your way. If you try to pay someone for, say you're getting your house work done and you try to pay somebody in Italian lira or, something like that, they're going to be less willing to take that, or they might charge you a whole lot more because they're not as confident they're going to be able to pay someone else in that or sell it later. So it's all the whole concept of money is just that you have something that other people value. Um, that's kind of what it comes down to. It's kind of weird.
Well, I mean, working with a lot of businesses, a lot of people are like, "What's my business worth?" Your business is worth whatever someone's willing to pay for it, and
Exactly.
that's simple. You might value it at $20 million, but if someone's only willing to give you 10% of that, and give you $2 million, you have to make that decision. Hey, do I have to change what this value is? And it's kind of an open-ended question, I guess, and I think it's something that it can be as simple as it's whatever other people value it at, no matter
That's
what.
that's the bottom line. That's it. That's it. And when the ecosystem gets big enough, people value it more because it has more and more utility, right?
Yeah.
If it's a small ecosystem and there's a small number of people using the currency, then it's not the network effect is not as powerful in that case, you know.
Well, I think that's a really good word to use, utility. The utility of cryptocurrency, the utility of Bitcoin or whatever is being built off of this is so important because the transactions that you can have because of that utility is going to be or potentially could be something crazy. We were talking to Jeremy Johnson of Janus Research, episode 76, and he was saying you can basically have two people, maybe you do a speaking gig somewhere, and the company that is hiring you, and you, the speaker, and then this transaction happens, and there's no cash in there. There's no, you're not waiting days. It just happens when the two basically confirm that thing happened. And I think that the utility of it can be so practical. And I think maybe because it was too nerdy before is why people don't get behind things because they don't understand it. But then you start using terms that make people grasp the concept of it. It makes it easier. You got into 2012. What's kind of your background in general? Like engineer by trade?
Yeah, I have a master's degree in electrical engineering, and I was working as an engineer in the defense industry until about 5 months ago when I decided to jump off that ship and jump into this full time.
And how, I mean, you're in this world, so it's a risky world already. Why start a business in a risky world?
Um, because I think that there is a tremendous upside, right? I mean, um, this is the birth of a new industry, a whole new world, a whole new way people are going to operate. And I became fully convinced of that a long time ago, and I think others are becoming more convinced of that as every day passes. But I think the chance to get in on this as an early mover, the upside is absolutely enormous. And say if everything crashes and burns and everyone decides that Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies are not really the future, then I'll go back and be an engineer again.
You,
But
you
I
have a
thought
wife
at
and
the time
kids.
I do, yeah.
Was that hard to convince them? Do they? The kids probably don't get it yet.
Kids have no idea what's going
What about the
on.
wife? How hard was that?
They're just they're pretty little. My wife actually was 100% behind it. She is amazing. I'm very fortunate to be married to an amazing woman that was very eager for me to make this leap.
It's good to have wives that are eager, passionate, and welcoming of such crazy, risky lives that we live. So you started a couple months ago, 34 Bytes. You guys can learn about
Yes.
them at 34bytes.com. It's BYTES.com. You can check it all out in the description and in the show notes. Tell me about 34 Bytes. What's kind of the thing behind
So
it?
sure. So what we're doing is building point of sale terminals so that people can transact in cryptocurrencies for in-person payments. Um, People describe Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies as kind of the internet of money, which I totally agree with. But I think there's a tremendous opportunity for people to use it in the real world instead of cash and credit cards. Depending on, Bitcoin's become more expensive to transact in lately, but other cryptocurrencies and other things like the Lightning Network, which is being developed. can make transactions incredibly cheap. When you compare that to the price of credit cards and other financial instruments we have now, there's the potential to massively undercut those. And for a merchant that has thin profit margins as it is if they're a restaurant or a store, that kind of thing can be very enticing to them. I haven't really talked to anybody that enjoys working with their credit card processor. It's always
3%. I mean, that's
yeah. And it's actually, I mean, if you really add up all the nickel and dime stuff they get you for every month, it's more than that. And it's so opaque. It's really hard to understand what you're being charged for. And at the end of the day, how much time do you have to argue with them about what they're charging you versus just needing to keep your business going,
Well, even as the consumer, it's ridiculous. The bank isn't closed, or the bank is closed half a day. It's closed on weekends.
Yeah.
It's 2018. It just seems so like, why are we still like dinosaurs? Like this is ridiculous. So point of sale, meaning you are trying to be a point of sale at a 7-Eleven, at a retail, or at a place where you would normally do a credit card transaction, but instead,
here's our actual device right here. Okay. It's looks like the same thing everyone uses 100 times a day.
Yep.
Except what we've done is implemented Bitcoin transactions on it.
So what are they? Are they sliding? Are they using a chip? What is the? How do they get access?
No, the terminal basically prints out an invoice that looks like this. It displays a QR code to the customer, and the customer can use any Bitcoin or cryptocurrency wallet app, and those apps are able to scan those QR codes as a standard format, and the payment gets made from the customer's phone to the merchant.
Wow. So what if your typical Visa, MasterCard, Amex, Diners Club, if that's still a thing, they're paying what, 3+% on average, let's call it that. There's no transaction here. How does, or a less of a transaction? How does it work?
You mean transaction fee?
Yeah.
Yeah, we're still charging a transaction fee, but it's we're trying to keep it as low as possible. Around 1% or something in that neighborhood.
And 1% at what it's trading at today, not in dollar.
1% of the value of the transaction is being made.
Okay.
So whatever, so then yes, the cryptocurrency will then have a value that floats against other currencies. So that's that concept is called Forex Risk, where if ultimately the merchant needs dollars or euros to pay his electric bills and things like that, there's a conversion. There's a conversion step going from Bitcoin or Litecoin or whatever to their fiat US dollars or euros, and so that exchange rate is going to fluctuate from the time of the transaction to the time the merchant cashes out into their fiat. So that exchange rate can float, and there's a risk that the merchant could make a little less money than they thought in the transaction, or they could make a little bit more money on the transaction. And that whole concept is called Forex Risk.
Is it Forex? How do you spell
that?
Like
Forex. Forex means like foreign exchange. That's what currency traders do. So foreign exchange risk. Just the ability for cryptocurrencies to float like any other currency against the fiat currency the merchant's using represents a little bit of risk. And sometimes right now when everything's so volatile, people decide that risk is not worth it. If you think that ultimately the trend for cryptocurrencies is upwards because it's the new thing, then you don't mind that, and maybe you do your transactions and you keep everything in cryptocurrency. You can do that as well.
I have a customer who owes me a couple $100. He has a crap ton of money in Litecoin. He wants to pay me in Litecoin. Should I do it?
Yeah, if you don't need that money to pay bills right now, I'd say do it. Do it, and then don't look at it every 20 minutes or every 20 days.
My stock portfolio, I don't do that anyway. So I just kind of set it, and I'll look like every 6 months or so, and that's it. Like I bought them for the long term. I use it more of like a savings account, really, and just let it go. So. Yeah,
the cryptocurrency market, I think probably about a week ago, took a massive plunge, and there's all kinds of reasons why people think that happened, and but some things dropped like 30%, and it's funny. if you've been in cryptocurrency long enough, that's just kind of
It happens.
that's not just another day, but it's not an unseen thing, unheard of thing. And I watch the markets plunge, and I just like, you know what, I'll just check again in a couple days because if you're holding the long term, that stuff shouldn't phase you because it's hard. If you got a lot of money, of course, it's hard to see your balance fluctuate by big numbers, but you gotta you got to have only enough that you're not afraid to lose it. But you can't get wrapped around the axle every time it goes up and down by percentage points.
It's a great way to say it. So, how did you come up with this concept? You'd been in the Bitcoin world for a while. How did you kind of grasp that this was something that was necessary and needed?
Well, I mean, I'm a electrical engineer by training, and I mean, all my life I've been building things and taking them apart. I kind of live in the physical world rather than the software world. And a lot of the development that was going on and still is in this space is for is like software applications, wallets for your phones, escrow services, all kinds of stuff that's pretty well covered, I think. I mean, people are still coming up with great ideas, but one thing that I was immediately thought of was, how can we, if this is going to be a currency of the future, we need to be able to spend it in our real lives, right? And phone apps kind of take care of one half of that. For merchants to have a phone app running that the customer can pay to, I've talked to a lot of merchants, and that really doesn't make sense for them. It doesn't really fit into their workflow. People are using their personal phones, and maybe that person's gone one day, or the battery's dead, and all these different things that didn't make that a really good solution. So I started looking at building a dedicated piece of hardware to fill that role.
So I'm literally, I have an iPhone, so I was looking at, I just typed in Bitcoin on the App Store. So I would download, so I'm seeing right now, Coinbase, Bitcoin Wallet, Blockchain, Bitmoji. I don't think that is Bitcoin. But so those are the top three. So I could download one of those as the consumer and then go and then QR code it at the place and get the transaction, or?
Yes. So you download the wallet.
It doesn't matter what wallet, or is there a specific wallet?
No, it doesn't matter what wallet.
Okay.
As long as the wallet has the ability to read QR codes, which most of them do, that's kind of a...
Okay. But those three, blockchain,
paper.
Bitcoin Wallet, and Coinbase, all should work?
Yep.
Okay, cool.
And so downloading the wallet is step one, but step two is to actually put money into it.
Right.
So you can do that through Coinbase or Gemini or all these different services and exchanges. And you can link, when you go up to one of those sites, you can link your bank account just like you normally do with other things. And you can transfer money over and they'll appear. And then once you have them in cryptocurrency, you can send them from your account to your phone, to a buddy, to a merchant. You can send them wherever you want.
It's
around
crazy.
The world.
It's crazy that your trade is that you worked at professionally for so long is something that you can actually create a business off of. It looks like it's just a normal kind of terminal that you would see that doesn't have the credit card slide. Was it built to look just like that, or?
No, so we're actually not manufacturing the terminal.
Oh, okay.
And this does have EMV slot and the magstripe reader and
so
NFC.
it's still the same. It could be the same POS that they're already using.
Absolutely, and we're working on getting traditional credit card payments implemented on it, so that we could just give the merchants a one-stop solution. So we buy that from a manufacturer, and then we've got custom software that we've developed that we put on there so that it can work with our system.
Are you in any stores yet?
We're just getting rolled out. We are talking with some currency exchangers in Montreal. A sandwich shop here in Los Angeles has two terminals. A guy up in San Francisco has some, and I'm getting emails probably every day of people that are interested in learning more about the terminal and getting one for their own use cases. Or a lot of people want to be distributors. They live in some country or area, and they say, hey, I want to present this to merchants in my area, which is fantastic,
Well, if you are a merchant and you're looking for this 34 bytes, bytes.com, be sure to hit up Steven. So, how much do they cost?
Right now, we're selling the terminals for $300.
Okay.
We can discount that a little bit depending on what the business is and what kind of, right now we're working very closely with each merchant to look at their case and help them out. We want this to be as valuable to them as possible. So we are really interested in hearing feedback from them. I like this feature. I don't like that feature. It'd be great if it could do this, because we're still kind of in that. The MVP
Yeah.
phase where we're kind of trying to round off the sharp edges and make it the best thing it can be.
And $300, is that a normal price range for a POS like this? Or
Normally, in the credit card world, a lot of times they'll give you free of charge. Well, you don't pay them up front. They'll give you a terminal, maybe a low end terminal that you can use. But of course, you actually are paying for that in the fees you pay. But it's we would love to get to that same position where we can just give the terminals out, and that's something we're looking at. There's a number of ways we could do that, but that obviously not presenting the merchant with the purchase up front is a lot easier to get into the market.
how big is your team?
We have two software developers, myself, and two advisors.
So, I think what I heard is there's no marketing or business person on that team.
That's correct. Right now, we are just we're just dealing or just people that we have a Twitter account and stuff, but it's not very active. And right now, most people have heard of us through word of mouth or an article about us. So
Or this
that's
show.
or this. Now we're going to get a flood of inbound requests. No, so right now we intentionally haven't done that because before we go make some big splash on the world, we want to make sure that the terminal's working, as well as it can, and be ready to unleash it.
So knowing that, and I'm gonna be a little general here, but software engineers are typically not business people. How do you be a founder of a business, a CEO of a business, if that's not what you're best at? Like, how do you make those calls? How do you reach out to people? How do you do the uncomfortable, where generally that space is filled by someone else on your team that you just don't have yet?
I've always, I'm an engineer, but I have always had an entrepreneurial streak in me, and I don't mind. I like thinking about big picture stuff. Working on budgets and roadmaps and things like that. That's the kind of stuff I like, and I don't mind talking to customers. Right? I mean, you have to. That's the people that are. That's where it's all about.
So with something that's so volatile, then, and you guys trying to put together a roadmap, how do you kind of predict the future when you don't really know? Well, you might not even know what it is today.
Yeah, I mean, so that is kind of the risk with all businesses, but it's probably magnified in this one. But I am just an absolute believer in the direction that this is going. Not just my project, this company, but this technology is going to be transformative around the world, and maybe not, 1 year from now, maybe not even 5 years from now, but the writing is on the wall as far as I'm concerned in terms of where this is going, and there will be a solution. There's going to be a need for a solution like this, and if we can build everything out and be a first mover in the space, then that's fantastic.
I think you're right. How does something like this get mass adoption then? How does something like this stop getting such negative press when it can be so revolutionary?
I think that it's the mass adoption of things like this and solutions like this are going to be probably not in first world countries like the United States, Western Europe, Australia, those kinds of places. I think it's going to be driven more by need. Because, like it or not, whether it could be better or not, we've got a very well functioning banking system, right? We're very fortunate to live in a stable place where the currency is stable. It's not hyperinflating and things like that. So I think there's less of an attraction for your average person on the street in New York to start paying for things in cryptocurrency than there is for somebody that lives in Venezuela or some other place where, soldiers come to your door and steal your money, and take your things,
Sure.
without any kind of warning. Those places exist, and I think those people have a stronger need, and they'll be more likely the ones to adopt in a major way first.
Bitcoin is FinTech.
Some people argue that it's not fintech. I don't know. I mean, fintech is financial technology, right? I put it into that category.
So on episode 46, we talked with Nectaris Lilolas, which is a mouthful to say.
Yeah.
He's from Startup Bootcamp, which is an accelerator that has offices all across the country. And they have a division. And he said that their best results are when they don't work with America because it's so hard because of all the regulations. So kind of going back and to help with that kind of point that we were just talking about third world countries, you think that non-American Bitcoin stuff is going to be, you're just going to get more adoption not in America first, or?
Yeah, I mean it's really hard to say, like you were saying before, and the situation changes daily. I mean, there's been a lot of activity in the last week or so on this thing called the Lightning Network, which is going to be a layer. It is a layer on top of Bitcoin that allows incredibly cheap transactions instantaneously. Kind of the stuff that people originally envisioned Bitcoin as. And so things like that, there's a lot of big pieces moving in the space, but I think your point is correct. I mean, in terms of working in the United States from a regulatory standpoint, it's easier to work in other places. A lot of times, even getting an exchange account for an American or even a bank account, some banks don't want to deal with Americans because there's all this regulation that's attached, and the SEC is not. I mean, they go worldwide. They don't stop at the borders, right? So if you've got bank accounts in other countries, they'll come and tax you on those things there and all the stuff that they're just doing their job. But some banks just don't want to deal with American customers, and doing the KYC, know your customer and anti-money laundering stuff when you sign up for an exchange account. In the United States, it can be a pretty good amount of work and time, waiting for people to verify your identification and all this stuff. In other countries, it's much more lax. That's a double-edged sword, of course, but it's true that there's far less regulations in other countries that can impede these kinds of things.
It's your favorite time, folks. Ask Zach questions. This one is from Edwin Street at Coffee Sales. His question. He says, because of his full-time job outside of this business and other activities, my focus gets thrown off and I try to do all the social media development and finance. As a startup, I don't have all the tools, the coffee grinder or trade help, social media marketing, but he needs to continue to grow. Should I start raising some capital so that my sales can be more readily support the operation? I need paid help to design logos, branding, and to get equipment needed. So he's not sure he says, so I'm not sure if I need to have everything together before I start asking for money, or can I ask for what I need now? So, great question, Edwin. Hope you're doing well. What I would do is I would focus on the friends in this case. Now, raising money for the things that you're doing, it doesn't look like it's a lot of money. You can maybe do some friends with some personal loans. Maybe you can go to a bank and get a little bit of money there. You could do a small Kickstarter. You could do some sort of crowdfunding campaign there. What I would say is, and I learned this technique from Mike Fleck of Cypherpoint Software many, many moons ago. He says, when you're in early stage business, don't pay $100 don't pay more than $100 for anything. So you can always find something on the cheap. And so it might not be the most beautiful thing, but you can go to Fiverr and get a logo. You can probably find a logo from one of your friends who might do design work for a discounted rate. You just have to ask, right? And so, or maybe you're throwing an event. So he goes and does these coffee events at different coffee shops and breweries and educational summits. Maybe you get those people to pay you more in advance, and you're able to buy the supplies with the money raised from that. Don't always look at money raised as being the thing, right? Find a way that you can take your revenue and make that pay for the stuff that you're doing, so that you don't owe anyone. You're just paying, you're taking the funds that you've received as revenue, and you can spend the money accordingly there. From a social media perspective, call up your friends. And when I say call, I don't necessarily mean pick up the phone and call. It could be a text, it could be an email. Maybe start a really small email campaign with your immediate friends and family that that are going to support this, and just tell them the story. If you remember, we had a conversation with Jason Vitug of Frugal and You Only Live Once, and he really talks about the early stages of his kind of content writing, where he talks about spending his time with those that were really passionate about him and what he was doing, and he would share the story with them. So Edwin, maybe there's a couple of people that you can share this story with who will then in fact share it, so you're getting that virality moment. I think what's really important is don't overthink this stuff, right? There's a million things that you're going to have to do in your business, right? So figure out, just do a couple of small things. So you're doing these Facebook Live videos. Instead of just posting a video of Facebook Live, do that. Make sure you have a great description, and then embed that information back on coffee sales, because you need repeatable, searchable content, right? You need to be able to be indexed. And a lot of times with marketing and social media, the tools aren't indexed in the same way, where you're not going to be found forever. So you can build up this following, which is great, but if you don't have that content to be indexed, so it can't be searchable over and over again, you're doing yourself a disservice. So think small. Don't spend a lot of money, $100 or more, $100 or less, and that's it per thing. But I bet if you ask, you can get some stuff done here. And then instead of trying to raise money, try and make money to pay for the things that you need. So if you need a coffee setup, have wherever you're going for that next thing, have that person pay for it in the way that you price your stuff. And then once you have it, you don't have to buy that again. Edwin, I hope this helps. If you guys have questions, all you have to do is go to startwithhatch.com/ask and ask away, or comment below. And that's this edition of Ask Zach. When you're talking with customers and they have reservations, what types of things are they coming up with, and how do you push back?
The usual reservation is, because they want to know if this is a valid or a valuable business expense, right? Is this a value add for me as a shop owner or whatever? I think the technology is amazing, and I it's just so cool, but that's me, and that's most store owners don't have the ability to or resources just to start adopting some technology because it's cool, right? That's not a valid business case. Sometimes they do, right? Sometimes they're big fans and they want to start playing with it themselves. But other times it's more of a, there's got to be a business case presented to. And so the merchants will ask, well, are we going to get customers? Is this really going to be something that people are using? And I think every day that goes by, that question gets closer and closer to being answered in the affirmative, that yes, there will be people doing this. And you can be an early adopter of this new technology, and it in itself will attract customers just because they want to do it.
Well, it can be a marketing thing for them.
Sorry,
like Bitcoin accepted here on,
absolutely.
On the door. I mean, that's a marketing thing, and for $300, I mean, that could be really interesting.
Yeah. So and the real value, of course, is going to come when the transactions once again get cheap enough so that it truly can undercut credit cards and other forms of payment right now, because that's the strongest business case, right? But we're going to save you money, and that's where this is going eventually. Yeah.
How did you fund the business? How did you get the business funded?
Just out of my own pocket. It's been initially it was a kind of a slow burn. You know, just put one foot in front of the other. Keep going. And I look at the stuff that we have working now, and it's a substantial amount of work that has gone into this to get it to where it is. And it's all been funded out of my pocket, but probably more than that is just the time invested, right? Waking up early to write code and staying up late to write code and make sure that everything's working right. That's where the real commitment is.
What about work-life balance? How do you do that?
For me, kids and wife always come first. There's cases where I have a meeting or something in the evening and I need to go do that or some sort of event. But I work before they wake up and I work after they go to sleep.
So you're familiar with the term anomaly, right?
Anomaly?
Anomaly being something different, being kind
Yes.
of. So how do you become the anomaly in your business? How do you become the authority in your business so that people can trust you, come to you, buy from you, knowing that you have experience in this world because you've been doing it for 5 or 6 years, but from a business perspective, you are still relatively new, just a couple of months into this. So how do you become that anomaly? How do you become that authority that people respect and will buy from and trust?
Yeah, I think in general, well, first off, you have to deliver what you promise, right? That's, I think, the bottom line. And I think right now there's a good opportunity because this is such a new space and it's such a really unique space that's developing. There's a lot of need for people that are knowledgeable in cryptocurrencies and how all this stuff works because the popularity of these technologies is exploding, not just as a currency, but for other things, land title registries and voting and equity management of companies, all that kind of stuff. And as this technology becomes more popular, there's really a need for people to understand it. And I think being a first mover and having worked on this stuff for a long time, hopefully we've put ourselves in the position where we can, be that knowledgeable source that people can come to and talk about things with, and we can provide them solutions that fully take advantage of the technologies. So I think it's kind of a convoluted answer, but I think being a first mover in this space that is so new and unique offers a chance. If you can deliver on what you say you're going to deliver, then you can kind of build that reputation.
Ain't that the truth? Deliver what you say you'll do. I tell people all the time, if you can't do something, don't tell someone you can. And if you want to talk about the future, say, hey, this is what we can do today, and we're working to get to this position. But the scary part about that is some people might only hear that future piece, so it's very difficult to say things that you can't do. But I love that. Deliver on what you say you will. Content's a big
Manage
thing.
expectations. Yeah,
manage expectations. So content's a big thing. Are you guys getting into kind of the content game where you guys are trying to educate people more on this type of stuff?
I would very much like to. I think that's actually one of the biggest obstacles right now, or not obstacle, a challenge, is just education of both the consumers and the merchants. Because, think about when we switched over in the United States, we switched over to this EMB, chip and pin or chip and signature way of using credit cards. And people just go crazy about it, because it's changing people's entrenched behavior or something like that people have been doing for decades, sliding a credit card. Changing that kind of low-level behavior is a very hard thing to do. So I think education and increasing familiarity with people is the important thing. So in terms of generating new content, absolutely, I would love to get to the point where we can have a blog or a newsletter or something like that talks about the industry and the technology and where things are going. That's absolutely something I want to do.
Do you think So I get what your point is with the chip, but the way I looked at it is it was basically the same process, right? So you're basically taking device and thing that it needs to talk to and getting it to bump, slide, insert, whatever it is. And so it was basically the same thing. It was just a security piece to it. I think where the issue was the timing and how long it took.
Yeah.
I don't think that I don't know. Well, now there's some places like my grocery store is now really quick, but the 7-Eleven is like 15 seconds. And so it's, I guess 7-Eleven doesn't care. No.
And that, and that's funny. I mean, 15 seconds sounds like such a negligible amount of time, but when you're used to something taking 3 seconds, and you just slide it and you sign, you do your thing.
That's a lot. I mean, how you can? That's a lot of time. I mean, 15 seconds. Imagine. I'm gonna do the math, but that's 4 an hour. So 240 times 24, whatever that is. I mean, that's a lot. That's how many transactions you can do if you're lying out the door the whole time.
Yeah,
I mean, it's a big difference.
It does add up, and there's a big psychological thing where you're thinking like, my God, this is taking forever.
If my math is right, it's just over 5,700 transactions that you can do a day now if you have a 15-second chip reader. Where, I mean, I would be willing to bet a 7-Eleven or something like that does thousands of transactions a day.
Yeah, the question is, are people really being backed up?
Yeah,
is
sure.
is the line being held up by this process?
I know in the grocery store it did seem like it was longer, but then they fixed it. That one was like, for me, it was like 15, 20, 25 seconds. It was that's a long time.
I think the bigger piece that like you're talking about is the impression upon the customer or the user. You're just thinking, my God, this is terrible. Why am I standing here for an extra 10 seconds? Which sounds laughable, but it's a real thing.
Well, that's what's now with like Apple Pay or whatever. It's kind of like the bump technology where you just touch it and go. And I mean, I think it's interesting. So is that the type of stuff that you guys, when you guys are building out, that you have to think about, look at?
Yeah, absolutely. Because the whole purpose of this, I mean, one of our main goals is to make this new technology easier to use, right? I mean, it's very opaque and complex to a lot of people right now. I'd say most people, they've heard of Bitcoin, they don't really know much about it, and really you shouldn't have to know about it to use it. But there's a big challenge of making this an easy to use technology, and especially in the product like this, where you're directly interacting with the public and people that may not, they're coming from all walks of life. So it's got to be easy to use. It's got to be fast.
Is there something in the last 6 months that you thought you would never learn, or something that popped up? You're like, wow, I never thought of that from a business perspective, and just or you read an article and it really helped you? Is there kind of like an aha moment?
I like to. I read a lot about the economy, the world economy, and I try my best to keep up on the developments in the crypto space. It's like a full-time job. Just trying to stay alert. And but I was actually having a conversation, because it's funny. I mean, this technology is such a paradigm breaker or paradigm shift. It really, like what I was saying before, when you it kind of makes you think about what is money, right? What is money? It kind of shakes up what you thought you understood. Every once in a while I'll have conversations with people and they'll present some use case or something that just wouldn't be possible. And it is with cryptocurrencies. It's digital money. There's so many things you can do with it that are just not apparent, that we're not used to being able to do with centralized banking.
What's something about you that people don't know about?
Oh man, I love. I always have music on in our house when we're cooking or reading or whatever. There's always music playing. Usually jazz or something kind of mellow. But I like that.
What's
having kind of ambiance.
What's something on your bucket list?
Bucket list. I want to go I want to travel to South America. I've been there once with my wife in 2009. I want to go there again. Um, I can't decide if I want to go skydiving. um, it, uh,
They have indoor skydiving now.
yes, that certainly is like the training wheels version, where you can only fall 5 feet instead of 5,000.
Yeah, a little different. What's something about Los Angeles that you love and keeps you there?
I like that uh, there's just so much. People say that LA doesn't have culture and things like that, and I kind of disagree with that. There's so many different communities here where you can go get like really authentic food and just kind of experience all these different aspects of life that it's just this big enormous melting pot of cultures and of course the beach. You're close to the beach, you're close to the mountains. You gotta you know survive the traffic. I think that's the biggest drawback is the traffic. It's actually pretty out of control.
Should there have been two NFL teams moved there in the last 2 years?
No.
Are you a Rams fan now?
Well, I'm from San Diego, so I grew up watching the Chargers.
Okay.
And the Rams moved here, and it seemed like it was kind of like a non-event. I mean, most people, it wasn't like people on the street were talking about it, like in bated breath. But then the Chargers moved, and it's like, oh, we've got two teams now, right? It's I think largely my impression was that largely the city was pretty indifferent, especially indifferent to the Rams, and then really indifferent to the Chargers.
Did the Rams ever sell out a game? Did they sell out that playoff game?
I don't know.
Because that stadium was empty a lot of the games.
Yeah,
even though they were doing well.
Yeah, I know the Chargers stadium has been empty. This new stadium they're building, though, is looking to be pretty massive.
Well, have you reached out to them yet to be the POS?
Not yet. One other thing, actually, that we're working on is not only providing this terminal that we've been talking about, but also kind of the back end service where other people, if we have an API that's exposed, and other point of sale manufacturers and things like that can come and access our service, kind of a white label. That's something we definitely want to implement.
Very cool. Stephen, I appreciate your time. Episode 78 of the 1004 show. You guys can check out Stephen and 34 Bytes at 34bytes.com and
Please
check
do.
them out. And I think I'm going to accept that Litecoin from that customer.
Do it.
And I'll update you every 6 months on where it is.
Yes, exactly.
Awesome.
No more frequently than that.
Thanks for your time today, Stephen.
Thank you very much.
Absolutely.